I was 25 years old, standing in the middle of O'Malley's bar in Manhattan, with 3 margaritas running through my veins and absolutely no filter left. My best friend Isabelle was laughing at something ridiculous I'd just said, and in that exact moment, I realized I couldn't keep lying to myself anymore. So I did what any sensible person would do. I blurted out the biggest secret of my life. But what happened next? It completely shattered everything I thought I knew about our friendship. And trust me, you're not ready for this. Before continuing, leave a comment telling me which city you're listening from, so I can see how far this beautiful story is reaching. The thing about best friends is that you think you know everything about them. You know their coffee order, their embarrassing middle name, the way they cry during sad movies, and exactly which song will make them dance like nobody's watching. But what you don't always know is how to tell them that you're completely, utterly, and hopelessly in love with them. My name is Ava, and this is my story. It was Friday, March 14th, 2025, when everything shifted. I remember the date because it was the anniversary of the day Isabelle and I met. 8 years ago, in a college chemistry class where we both nearly blew up a beaker and got detention together. 8 years of inside jokes, late-night conversations, terrible karaoke nights, and a friendship so solid I thought nothing could ever crack it. But friendship, I was learning, could be a beautiful prison. "Ava, you're being weird," Isabelle said, swirling her margarita with that knowing smile of hers. She had this ability to read me like a book, which was both comforting and absolutely terrifying. Her dark curly hair fell across her shoulder as she leaned closer, her brown eyes searching mine. "What's going on in that head of yours?" We were at O'Malley's, our favorite dive bar in the Upper West Side, the kind of place where the bartender knew our names and the jukebox still played CDs. The walls were covered in old photographs and neon beer signs that cast everything in a soft, forgiving glow. It was crowded for a Friday night. Groups of people celebrating, laughing, living their lives without the weight of impossible feelings pressing down on their chests. I'd been planning this moment for weeks. Not this exact moment, but some moment. Some hypothetical future where I'd work up the courage to tell Isabelle the truth. I'd imagined it 100 different ways. Serious conversations over coffee, heartfelt letters I'd never send, confessions made during a quiet walk through Central Park. I'd never imagined it would happen like this, with tequila as my courage and O'Malley's as my witness. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. I wrapped my fingers around the cold glass of my drink, using it as an anchor. "And I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't make jokes. Just listen." Isabelle's expression shifted. She set down her margarita and gave me her full attention. This was one of the things I loved about her. When it mattered, she was completely present. No phone, no distractions, just her full focus on you. "Okay," she said softly. "I'm listening." I took a breath. The bar noise seemed to fade into the background. Someone was playing Wonderwall on the jukebox. Of course they were. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone around us could hear it. "I'm in love with you," I said. The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other like they'd been waiting 8 years to escape. "I'm in love with you, and I have been for I don't even know how long. Maybe a year, maybe longer. And I know this is crazy, and I know this could ruin everything. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep sitting next to you and acting like my heart isn't doing backflips every time you laugh. So there, I said it. I'm completely, totally, irrevocably in love with my best friend." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. In reality, it was probably only 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds contained every possible outcome I'd ever feared. Isabelle's face went pale. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her drink. I watched her process what I'd just said, and I felt my stomach drop into my shoes. This was it. This was the moment I'd destroyed everything. What happened next wasn't what I expected. Instead of pulling away, instead of making an excuse to go to the bathroom and never come back, Isabelle did something that made my breath catch in my throat. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Ava," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something too." My heart stopped, literally stopped. I was convinced I was having a cardiac event right there in O'Malley's bar. "I've been in love with you too," she continued, her eyes glistening with tears. "For almost as long as I can remember. But there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone." It was Saturday morning now, March 15th, and we were sitting in Isabelle's apartment in the East Village, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the wreckage of a conversation that had lasted until 3 a.m. We'd left the bar in a daze, walking through the cold Manhattan streets, our hands finally intertwined, our minds completely blown. Her apartment was small but warm, filled with plants and books and photographs of our adventures together. There was a picture of us at Coney Island, another from a trip to Boston, one from last summer when we'd gone hiking in Vermont. All these moments, all these memories, suddenly took on a different meaning. "What is it?" I asked, sitting on her worn leather couch, my legs tucked underneath me. The morning light was streaming through the windows, and Isabelle looked exhausted and beautiful and terrified all at once. She took a deep breath. "I've been seeing someone," she said quietly. "For about 4 months now. His name is Daniel. And I think I might be in love with him too." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my chest tighten, felt the familiar sting of jealousy and heartbreak threatening to overwhelm me. But before I could spiral, Isabelle continued. "But here's the thing," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Daniel knows about you. He knows that you're the most important person in my life. And he's been trying to convince me that what I feel for you is real, and that I shouldn't ignore it. He said that if I truly loved him, I would be honest about my feelings for you. Because honesty is the only foundation worth building on." I stared at her. "So, Daniel is okay with you being in love with me?" "Daniel thinks I'm in love with both of you," Isabelle said. And then she started laughing, the kind of laugh that's half hysterical, half genuine. "Which is absolutely insane, right? I mean, who falls in love with 2 people at the same time? What kind of person does that make me?" "A human being," I said quietly. "It makes you a human being." We sat in silence for a moment, processing this new reality. The sun continued to rise over Manhattan, indifferent to the chaos of our lives. Somewhere in the city, millions of people were waking up to their normal, uncomplicated lives. And here we were, in Isabelle's apartment, trying to figure out how to love each other without destroying everything in the process. "I don't know what happens now," Isabelle said finally. "I don't know if what we feel is sustainable, or if it's just the intensity of finally admitting the truth. I don't know if Daniel will actually be okay with this long term, or if I'm just fooling myself. I don't know anything anymore." "Neither do I admitted. "But I know that I'd rather figure it out with you than spend the rest of my life wondering what if." She smiled then, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. And she leaned over and kissed me, soft and tentative, like we were both discovering something new. It was nothing like I'd imagined it would be. It was better and more complicated and absolutely terrifying all at once. The problem with keeping a secret in New York City is that there are approximately 8 million people living in a space the size of a postage stamp, and somehow, one of them is always your friend. It was Tuesday, March 18th, when Tessa found out. Tessa had been our third musketeer since college, the sarcastic one, the one who always said what everyone else was thinking, the one who could make you laugh even when your life was falling apart. She worked as a graphic designer in Soho and had an uncanny ability to show up at exactly the wrong moment. "Okay, what is going on with you two?" she demanded, sliding into the booth at our favorite coffee shop in the West Village. We were supposed to be having our weekly Tuesday morning coffee date, a tradition we'd maintained for years. But instead of our usual banter, Isabelle and I had been sitting in awkward silence, stealing glances at each other when we thought the other wasn't looking. "Nothing's going on," I said too quickly. "Everything's fine," Isabelle added at the exact same time. Tessa raised an eyebrow. She was wearing her signature red lipstick and had her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. "You're both lying. Your faces are doing that thing where you're both trying too hard to act normal, which means something very abnormal is happening. Spill." We exchanged a look. Some kind of silent communication passed between us, the kind that best friends develop after years of knowing each other. And then, because there was no point in lying to Tessa, we told her everything. To her credit, Tessa didn't scream or faint or do any of the dramatic things I'd been imagining. Instead, she ordered a cappuccino, sat back in her chair, and started laughing. "Oh my God," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Oh my God, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You two have been in love with each other for years, and it took 3 margaritas and a Friday night at O'Malley's to figure it out? This is like a bad romantic comedy." "It's not funny," I protested, but I was already smiling despite myself. "It's absolutely funny," Tessa said, "and it's also kind of beautiful, in a completely chaotic way. So what's the plan? Are you guys together now? Is Isabelle breaking up with Daniel? Are you running away to Vermont to live in a cabin together?" "We don't have a plan," Isabelle said quietly. "We're just taking it one day at a time." Over the next week, everything became a comedy of errors. Tessa appointed herself as our official relationship consultant, which meant she was constantly giving us unsolicited advice and making jokes at our expense. She created a group chat called Operation Figure Out Your Love Life and filled it with memes and song recommendations and increasingly ridiculous suggestions for how we should handle the situation. On Wednesday, March 19th, I accidentally sent Isabelle a text message meant for Tessa. It was a detailed description of how I felt when Isabelle smiled at me, complete with heart emojis and embarrassing metaphors about butterflies and fireworks. She responded with a screenshot and the words, "I love you too, you absolute disaster." On Thursday, March 20th, Isabelle and I had our first official date, if you could call it that. We went to a movie in the afternoon, trying to avoid running into anyone we knew. But of course we ran into Daniel at the concession stand. The 3 of us stood there in the most awkward triangle of human interaction ever created, trying to pretend like nothing was happening, while simultaneously radiating the energy of 3 people who were very much in the middle of something happening. Daniel, to his credit, was surprisingly cool about it. He bought us all popcorn and made a joke about how at least he knew where Isabelle was spending her time. But there was something in his eyes, a sadness, maybe, or a resignation, like he'd known this was coming all along. On Friday, March 21st, exactly 1 week after my drunken confession, Tessa organized what she called an intervention brunch at a place in Brooklyn. She invited Daniel too, which seemed like a terrible idea until it actually happened and somehow worked out. We sat around a table covered with mimosas and eggs Benedict, and we actually talked about it. Really talked about it. Not in the frantic, emotional way Isabelle and I had been talking, but in a calm, honest way that acknowledged everyone's feelings and fears. "I love you," Daniel said to Isabelle, taking her hand. "And I meant what I said about honesty being important. But I also need to be honest about the fact that this hurts. It hurts knowing that you love someone else. Even if that someone else is Ava, and even if I genuinely like Ava, it still hurts. I know, Isabelle said, squeezing his hand. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for your feelings, Daniel said. Just be honest about them. That's all I'm asking. Tessa, ever the pragmatist, raised her mimosa. To messy, complicated love, she said. May we all survive it with our friendships intact. We clinked glasses, and for the first time since my drunken confession, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could figure this out. The thing about love is that it doesn't come with an instruction manual. There's no guidebook for what to do when you fall in love with your best friend. There's no flowchart for navigating the feelings of someone else who's also in love with you. And there's definitely no roadmap for figuring out how to do it all without destroying the people around you in the process. By the end of March, we'd settled into a strange new normal. Isabelle and Daniel had broken up. Not dramatically, but with the kind of quiet sadness that comes from two people realizing they want different things. He'd been kind about it, understanding even. But there was a finality to it that made me feel guilty every time I thought about it. Isabelle and I were officially together, though we were keeping it quiet. We weren't ready for the world to know yet. We were still figuring out what together even meant. Were we girlfriends? Were we something else entirely? The labels felt insufficient for what we were building. It was April the 2nd when Isabelle dropped the bomb. We were lying in bed on a Sunday morning, the kind of lazy morning that feels stolen from real life. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, and there was a gentle rain pattering against the glass. Isabelle was tracing patterns on my arm, and I was thinking about how perfect this moment was, how I never wanted it to end. I got the job, she said quietly. I felt my stomach drop. What job? The one in Los Angeles, she said. The design firm I interviewed with last month. They called me on Friday. They want me to start in June. Los Angeles, 3,000 miles away. A new life on the opposite coast. Oh, I said, because what else could I say? I haven't accepted yet, Isabelle continued. I wanted to talk to you first, because this is a big decision, and you're part of it now. I sat up in bed, pulling the blanket around myself. The perfect morning had suddenly become complicated. What do you want to do? I asked. I want the job, Isabelle said. It's an incredible opportunity. It's the kind of job I've been dreaming about since college. But I also want you. And I don't know how to have both. You can have both, I said. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Long distance was possible, sure. But it was also hard. It was lonely phone calls at odd hours and missed moments and the constant ache of missing someone. Can I? Isabelle asked. Or am I just fooling myself? We literally just figured out how to be together. And now I'm supposed to move across the country. We spent the next week in a state of limbo. We didn't talk about the job offer. We just existed in this bubble of not quite happiness, both of us waiting for the other person to make a decision. Tessa, as always, had opinions. You have to let her go, she said on Wednesday, April 9th, as we sat in her apartment in Soho. If you love her, you have to let her take this opportunity. You can't ask her to give up her dreams for a relationship that's only been official for 3 weeks. I'm not asking her to give up anything, I protested. I'm scared. I'm scared that if she goes to Los Angeles, we'll drift apart. I'm scared that long distance won't work. I'm scared that I'll lose her. You might, Tessa said bluntly. That's the risk you take when you love someone, but you might also build something stronger. You might figure out that what you have is worth the distance. You might surprise yourself. On Friday, April 11th, Isabelle and I had the conversation we'd been avoiding. We were sitting on the roof of her building, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city was alive around us, car horns honking, people shouting, the constant hum of millions of lives being lived simultaneously. It was a beautiful, chaotic, overwhelming view. "I'm going to take the job," Isabelle said, "and I want you to come with me." I turned to look at her. "What?" "Come to Los Angeles," she said. "I know you have your job here, and your apartment, and your whole life, but I also know that you hate your job. You've been talking about quitting for months, and your apartment is a tiny studio that costs too much money, and your whole life it's flexible. You could make it flexible. You want me to move to Los Angeles with you?" I asked, trying to process what she was saying. "I want to try," Isabelle said. "I want to see if what we have is real enough to survive a move across the country. I want to build a life with you, but I also want to take this job, because it's important to me. And I think you could be important to me in Los Angeles too." I thought about my life in New York. I thought about my job at the marketing firm that paid well, but made me miserable. I thought about my tiny apartment and my student loans and my carefully constructed life that didn't actually make me happy. And then I thought about Isabelle. I thought about the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I thought about the feeling of her hand in mine. I thought about the possibility of building something new, something real, something that was just ours. "Okay," I said. "Let's go to Los Angeles." The moving truck pulled up to our new apartment in Los Angeles on June 15th, 2025. It was hot, the kind of dry, relentless heat that's completely different from the humid summers of New York. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun was so bright it hurt to look at directly. Our apartment was small but bright, with big windows that looked out onto a tree-lined street in Silver Lake. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. We'd found it together, picked out the furniture together, made the decision to build a life together. The first month was chaos. Isabelle started her new job at the design firm and came home every day with stories about her colleagues and her projects. I was still figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I'd quit my job at the marketing firm, and I was taking some time to figure out my next move. Tessa called constantly, complaining about how much she missed us and threatening to move to Los Angeles herself. Daniel had moved on, started dating someone new, and had become an unexpected friend to both of us. It was weird and complicated, but it worked. By July, I'd started freelancing as a content creator, working with small businesses to build their social media presence. It wasn't glamorous, but it was flexible, and it made me happy. I could work from coffee shops or from home, and I had time to explore Los Angeles, to figure out who I was outside of New York. Isabelle and I fell into a rhythm. We'd wake up early, go to our favorite coffee shop in Silver Lake, and spend the morning together before heading off to our respective days. We'd meet for lunch sometimes, or we'd text throughout the day, sending each other memes and song recommendations and little moments of our lives. In the evenings, we'd cook dinner together, badly, because neither of us were particularly good at cooking, and we'd sit on our small balcony and watch the sun set over Los Angeles. We'd talk about our days, our dreams, our fears. We'd laugh about how crazy it was that we'd moved across the country together after only knowing we were in love for 3 months. On August 20th, exactly 5 months after my drunken confession at O'Malley's bar, Isabelle and I were sitting on our balcony when she turned to me and said, "I'm glad you came with me." "I'm glad I came too," I said, taking her hand. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Leaving New York, leaving your life, taking a chance on something so uncertain?" I thought about it. I thought about the fear I'd felt when she first told me about the job offer. I thought about the uncertainty of moving across the country with someone I'd just started dating. I thought about all the ways this could have gone wrong. But it didn't go wrong. It went right. Not perfectly right. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt and fear, but it went right in the way that mattered. Not for a second, I said. Not for a single second. We sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The city lights were starting to come on around us, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of traffic and people living their lives. I thought about the girl I'd been 5 months ago, standing in O'Malley's bar with 3 margaritas running through her veins and absolutely no idea that her life was about to change. I thought about the courage it had taken to say those words, and the vulnerability of admitting something so true. And I thought about how sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when you're brave enough to be honest, when you're willing to risk everything for the possibility of something real. Isabelle squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. We didn't need to say anything else. We just sat there, together, watching the sun disappear below the horizon and the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. This was our new beginning. This was our story, and it was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story until the very end. Your support means everything to us. Here's a piece of advice that I want to leave with you. Never be afraid to be honest about your feelings, even when it's terrifying. The people who truly matter will appreciate your vulnerability, and you might just be surprised by what happens when you finally tell the truth. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. Your subscription helps us continue creating these beautiful narratives that touch hearts and inspire souls. And remember, every single one of you matters to us. May you always have the courage to chase your dreams, the wisdom to know when to take risks, and the love of people who truly see you. God bless you all.